I love Bigfoot. I love the $6 million man Bigfoot. I love the In Search of Bigfoot. I love the Legend of Boggy Creek Bigfoot. And I love the fact that tonight's guest portrayed Bigfoot in the movie Hope, which is available on Amazon and most video-on-demand services. Welcome to Don't Fear the Podcast, a production of thescareguy.com and hosted on the networks of that hashtag show. With me tonight, I'll start up in the corner. Cheeseman, welcome to the show, man.
Woo. Hey everyone, good to be here. Cheeseman here with the Scare Guy.
All right. Over to my other side, the much lovelier host tonight, Danae, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And Stan. That's the skull's name. He's Stan.
Oh, hey, Stan.
Hey, Stan.
And below Luke and the Brady Bunch squares over there is...
Hi, I'm Derek.
Good to have you, Derek.
I don't have cool backdrops or cool horror-themed stuff to wear, but there's a red cup on the shelf behind me in honor of Mitch Fever.
Oh.
Wow.
Speaking of red cup, who else do we have, Mr. Cleaver?
Hey everybody, it's old buddy Ben here with my red cup. Remember, why am I drinking out of this red cup? Well, it's because every time Ben Cleaver shows up, it's always a party. And as always, tonight's Don't Fear the Podcast on that hashtag show network is brought to you by Neft Vodka, reminding you to drink responsibly.
Always.
Out of a red cup. Out of a red cup, preferably.
Yeah.
All right, speaking of our guest this episode is the one, the only Mr. Pat Jankiewicz. Oh, applause all around.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, dear Lenny. I'm appreciative.
You're a giant personality in the world of entertainment, Comic-Cons, fandom, and horror journalism. I just watched him rip people to shreds in the movie HOAX. You guys got to watch it. Make sure you have not just eaten, though. He's also been in a number of other productions, including The Burning Dead, Chastity Bites, and the recently completed The Prey, The Legend of Carnoctus. I think I'm saying that right. Carnoctus?
Yeah, it was The Prey for a million years, and they finally named it after my character, so I'm happy.
Oh, so you played the, I think it's a Middle Eastern Bigfoot character, right?
Yeah, they sent me to Afghanistan. By that I mean the Blue Sky Movie Ranch in Antelope Valley where they shot Iron Man and the American Sniper.
Cool.
Nice. All right.
And Cheeseman, it's kind of cool. He was also on one of your favorite shows, Tim and Eric's Awesome Show. That's kind of awesome, man.
Tim and Eric, awesome show. Great job.
All right.
Yes, in fact, I've done over 10 of them. If you watch the Crimbus special, they did the Crimbus special, and if you watch that, they introduced my brother Don and I because we've done 10 episodes or more.
Oh, wait, I think I might have seen that.
You know him, yeah.
Well, my brothers and I have been in a bunch of them. I'm there when Tim is in the coma and we're trying to wake him up. We're hiding in the closet when Eric's parents are having sex. If you saw Road Trip.
Yeah.
My brother's the creep. Tim and I have a hike contest. There's a dance party. And we film his parents having sex. They don't know we're hiding in their closet. We've done so many of them. We love Tim and Eric. We did one episode of Eric Andre, who's very nice, and so is Hannibal. We love Tim and Eric and Dave Kneebone, who puts on the show. It's just, we've done so many episodes with them. My brother Stephen Donald play Michael Cera's brother in the episode Kitty Cat Man.
Yes, that's what I was thinking of. I was thinking of that one too. Oh my gosh, amazing.
Yeah, I was supposed to be. I had an audition, so I sent Steven, and that's the episode where Michael Cera comes home from college, and he can't bear to tell his brothers. He doesn't know if we'll still accept him once he can turn into a cat. It's very
so good.
Tim and Eric.
I love Tim and Eric.
Hey, Pat, I'm going to everyone's got tons of questions for you, but could you just fill us in a little bit? Here, we love to discuss horror, all things horror, and you've got a long history with horror, and we're going to talk a little bit about a couple things you did, but tell us a little bit about your history with horror, how you got into it, and what your place in the horror genre is.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm from Detroit. I'm from Detroit, Michigan originally, and I started writing professionally in college. You know what I mean? I mean, I started as a side gig that kind of paper. I started writing for film magazines, and then I started winding up doing interviews that the subjects really liked. In college, I did a piece on William Friedkin. So William Friedkin let me tag along for like a week.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah. I've written commercials. My late brother Tom, my brother Donald, and I wrote a commercial that wound up getting me my SAG card from David Lynch. So I've done about 30 commercials. I did a commercial for Rob Zombie's Turner Classic Movies, where I'm kind of a Hills of Ice type guy in my underpants on a porch with a three-legged dog. That was the three-legged dog was real. It was a three-legged pit bull. I don't know why they named him this, but his name was Rocket. But he was a great dog. I've done like
I can't run.
Yeah, well, he could run like hell. I mean, he was a three-legged dog, and the dog ran like the Batmobile. You know, especially when it was time to eat. He was better behaved than I was. You know. So I've done about 30 commercials. I've done a lot of commercials. I've done commercials for Tide, for Coors, for Coca-Cola, Burger King. I usually do. My commercials are kind of usually hillbillies and barbarians, so that's usually my commercial thing. And
those are my people.
And then,
Those are
and then
people,
that's my range, baby. Hillbillies and then Vikings. So you know, I had 2 commercials on during the Super Bowl this year. I was the singing waiter who introduced the world to the $6 burger at Carl's Jr. and Hardee's.
Nice.
You know, I've done a lot of straight commercial work where you're just the goof who tries to get you to eat the cereal. Dippin' Dots. I did a commercial for Dippin' Dots, that sort of thing. But I'm 6'9", and I found, you know, that led to kind of horror, and I've always been into horror. I've always liked horror. And when I was in high school and we moved to California, I just started crashing movie sets, you know, and I mean, and after that
You
in
just
college,
snuck in there, being a small guy.
Yeah, he snuck in.
Well, you know what? Well, because I've always been tall, because I'm 6'9", I've always, and even in high school, I was like 6'5", 6'6". So my brother Donald realized when we were in high school, you could find out where the shooting permits were on any given movie. And then you would call them and you would pretend to be from a magazine doing kind of a deeper voice so they didn't know it was a kid. And I mean, I was so young, I couldn't even drive yet. So then I had to find somebody who was A, could drive, and B, their parents wouldn't freak out if they were on a movie set all night long, you know? So once you start doing that, once you get bitten by the bug, there's no going back.
Yeah.
So in college, I started running for the British film market. You know what I mean? Because England would read about America, but they had no one to write about it. They had no American to cover it for them. So it was always, English magazines were always based on a year-old American movies. And once you start running for them, they could send you down and you could do an article on that week's Star Trek. You know what I mean? So that became kind of a side gig of mine. I did publicity, I wrote copy, and all this other stuff. I did teaching. But the magazine thing would put you in the room. No matter where you wanted to go, it would put you in there. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So anyway, that's how, like you guys, I wound up on the con circuit. I started doing, once you became like the magazine's go-to comic book guy, Comic-Con guy, you would just drown in work, you know? And you guys know, all 4 of you know how great Comic-Con is, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All 5 of you. Well, obviously, I failed now.
Now, what movie started it all for you? Like, what did you watch as a kid that was like, oh, you just totally fanboyed and just it inspired you to be where you are today?
Well, reruns, like every other kid, reruns of Twilight Zone really blew my mind. You know? And so watching these 100-year-old episodes of the Twilight Zone and seeing how great it was, and then while I was watching them, when I was in high school, I realized one of the guys who'd written for Twilight Zone and Star Trek lived not too far from, he lived in San Bernardino, a guy named Jerome Bixby. He wrote It's a Good Life. He created the Mirror Universe, for Star Trek. I mean, he wrote the original Alien. He wrote It, Terror from Beyond Space.
Nice.
So I looked him up. And I interviewed him for my high school paper. And then I wound up interviewing him again for my college paper. When I was in college, I went to Cal State San Bernardino. And then I used him to go professionally. I broke into the American market with him, just talking about. I sold half of him to Fango for horror and half of him for the sci-fi, and once you start running, you guys know what it's like, and gals, yeah. I'm not being sexist, but once you hit that market, you know what I mean? I mean, it's up to you to pitch the editor, and you just want to give them, you want to find interesting people, and you want to do interviews with people nobody knows about. So it was like, for me, it was like Twilight Zone, and then, the CBS late movie, you discover Kolchak the Night Stalker, and of course you love your stuff like that.
I was watching it last night.
What? Which episode?
I was watching the episode. Well, there's the one, the famous one with the vampires, but the swamp thing that's leaving all the moss all over the grounds, and he's
Richard Keel. That's one of the scariest episodes.
It scared me as a kid. Yeah.
I have one of the big. By the way, Kolchak's budget went through the roof on that. If you notice. The budget on that episode looks so great. I interviewed the director of that of one of the episodes. That was used as the sewer, and that was used as the underneath the college stadium. When you see the one with the prehistoric man who's eating people underneath in the vents under Chicago.
Yeah.
Kolchak had no money. The show was done on the cheap. The ratings were low because the TV movies were sensational, high rated, but the TV show was not.
Right.
So what happened is they're able to do the swamp monster because they were using this is what Richard Keel told me. They were using the sets from Earthquake.
Oh wow.
Cool.
Yeah, that's the storm drain from the ending of Earthquake. And because it was Universal Production, they ran right over and shot the Kolchak episodes on that.
That's awesome.
Oh, nice.
All right, you guys jump in. I know everybody's got questions here. But let me go one more before we start. Is it true? Is it true you can run as fast as a dog on all four limbs?
That is indeed true, ladies and gentlemen. I can indeed. In fact, when you see Legend of Carnoctus, you will see me. Well, you won't recognize me because I look like a baboon meets a spider, but I will be running on all fours every time you see me. In fact, when I was running, at the ending, I'm chasing down Danny Trejo or somebody. I'm trying to eat him. And they told me, I'm this is in the middle of the cave where Robert Downey is tortured in Iron Man. It's 110 degrees. And I've got this rubber monster face on. I can barely see. I'm trying to look out to the nostrils. And they told me, keep running. Don't worry. We have someone who will stop you when you come running by. And I ran by, and they go, just run for the red light. That's all I could see in this costume. And it's 110. It was 110. And so all I can see is this dark, dark cave. And I'm going to this winding cave. And there's a little red light. And luckily I had this big padded monster head on because I ran so fast the girl couldn't stop me in time. And I bounced off the camera.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I was dizzy, but I hit the camera, and I hit a rubber stalactite, and then you're flat on your back in this stupid costume, waiting for them to yell cut.
Oh my gosh!
What a shot, though!
Thank you, but they were happy with it. You can see me doing it without the makeup and Incubus. I did a bunch of music videos as myself doing the dog run.
You're in an Incubus video? Talk
show on mute. If you see that, that's the one where all the animals have people as pets, and I'm the pet of some animal person, and they have me doing my dog run on a table. I had to do a run on a table, and the cool thing is that when you go to the bathroom, when you went to the bathroom, there'd be a horse and a rabbit on each side of you in the urinal because they were in the costume for the night. They brought in these beautiful Russian models to be these cat women, wearing Siamese cat heads. And, it was just really trippy. Wherever you went, there were animal people staring at you all day long.
What a life.
It's interesting.
Oh my gosh. What do they clock you at running on all fours?
I can tell you this: dogs try to knock me down because it freaks them out. I can go as fast as a dog, and I can zigzag as well as a dog as well. So usually a dog will try and knock me down when I'm doing it. It was just something when I was a little kid. I used to follow the family Irish Center around on I'd crawl after him when I was like 4. And then I got as fast as the dog, and it was just this ability I never lost. I can still do it.
Oh my God.
There's footage of me doing it with Tupac, if you can believe that. Tupac tries to outrun me while drunk at Cavassier, but I'm running it's on a Tupac documentary. Watch for it, because I'm in a crash helmet. It was for a deleted scene for a video. I'm in a crash helmet running on all 4s, and he's drunk running on 2 legs, and he can't catch me. So
I'm going to look that up. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's out there.
Hey, Danae, your first time here on the Don't Fear the Podcast show.
Mhm.
What would you like to know? What kind of questions do you have?
Oh, well, I was wondering, just because, I mean, I'm pretty sure all of us are writers here, and I know Jim and I at least are journalists. What would be would you say was the coolest interview that you ever did? Or who's the person where it's this is the best story that I got to write, or whoever I had to interview was the best one?
Wow, by the way, that's a great question today. Wow. No, but wow, you know what? The weird thing is, it fluctuates, and you know this. When you get a big, weird, wild interview, it fluctuates. I mean, I remember interviewing a really manic Nicolas Cage. And I remember he'd get really excited and he would whip his hair at you. And I feel Nicolas Cage sweat going into my face. And I remember thinking, this is really a strange experience, And Nicolas Cage would go, man, and then Ghost Rider and he'd start whipping his hair, and then you feel. But for me, the wildest ride in the park, probably one of the greatest, an interview where you just love that guy from that moment on. I did a one-on-one on a terrible movie with Bill Paxton.
That's awesome.
Love that guy.
Bill Paxton, you guys. Bill Paxton was everything you saw him as. He totally was. He tried. He goes, I think it's time we went and had some drinks. And we were shooting they were shooting in a really crappy part of Long Beach. And we got up to go, and the publicist put her arms across the door, and she says, Bill, you are not taking the reporter to get drunk. That's not. And I mean, we couldn't go. She wouldn't let us leave the location, but he was pretty damn wild. He was very, very sweet. But for me, when you're doing an interview like that, to be 17, 18 years old in the inner sanctum with Stan Lee, while Stan Lee is telling you stories, to have Bob Kane, to interview Bob Kane, and Bob Kane he sends, my brother came along in that one, my brother Don. And Bob Kane, who, is a bit of a bullshitter, let's be honest. He never once mentioned the co-creator of Batman. And when I did, he acted like I expelled gas during the interview. he just kind of sniffed as though there was something unpleasant in the air. But Bob Kane, in this condo, Bob Kane has on the wall, it's like how when your grandma will frame a drawing you made for her really crappy from when you were little?
Yeah.
Bob Kane goes to my brother, get that off the wall. Bring that over here, son. Bring that over here. So my brother brings this incredibly crappy frame job. It looks like a 95-year-old did it, and Bob was pretty old. But so we take it off the wall, and it was his original drawing on cardboard for Batman. The sketches he gave. The sketches he used to sell Batman, the famous one of Batman jumping, Batman sitting, Batman.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And on the back of it, because again, it was a crappy frame job, so you could read it on the back. On the back of it, he had a political cartoon from the local newspaper about the current president at the time, Calvin Coolidge.
Wow.
I mean, isn't that trippy? I mean, he had a Coolidge cartoon. He drew Batman on the back of an old Coolidge cartoon,
That's wild.
Wow.
That's so cool.
Oh man.
But Danae, let me ask you guys, who's been your greatest interview?
Oh.
Who has been?
And by the way, hold on. No. You're not getting off that easy. Who's been your greatest and who's been your worst?
Oh,
I'll tell you our worst interview. We interviewed a guy who told us he was in Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
You talked to Hal Wamsley.
no. We talked
this
to
is a different guy. This is a guy who
Okay,
told us
there's
he had been a stunt performer in the newest Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
And we had done a little bit of research and we thought we had a lead on him and we were like, okay, yeah, this guy's legit. But no, he had bamboozled us.
and he
And
told
not just us, like-
us about the alternate endings to the movies, and we're like, whoa!
Oh, no.
And we were snookered.
Yeah.
You gotta be, yeah.
That was an interesting experience there. Twitter was
Wow.
not happy with us.
Yeah.
I read for Star Wars Insider, and you'll be shocked by the amount of fakes who will come at you because they want legitimacy, and only you guys can give them legitimacy. Right? And what they do is a lot of the fakes will do something like this: they'll go to a Comic-Con in Podunk, California, some little town, and the local paper won't know any better, and they'll provide a shot of a Jawa or something from the first movie, and say, "Hey, that was me." And then they'll take that clipping, that entirely fabricated article, they go to the next convention and they use it in the next paper. Well, look at here's my articles on being an original. Because I talked to a fake Jawa and his story did not hold up. His story, I knew he was fake when I was during the middle of the interview. I knew he was a fake, and when I wasn't going to go anywhere with the interview, but that happens so often. I mean, there's real Jawas around. I met two of the real Jawas from Death. They were from the Death Valley shoot. They're really nice. But the fakes will use and that bothers me as a creature guy. When you've got a fake guy, there was a guy going around telling people he was a monster in a certain movie. He wasn't, and I corrected him right then and there. But on his Facebook page, he has a badly doctored photo. And I showed it to the effects guy who did that movie while he was doing a live cast on me for another movie. And he just laughed his ass off. He goes, why would you lie about that?
Yeah.
Now, the happy ending to that story is, and again, we thought we had vetted this guy. We had kind of cleared it with a couple people we trusted, and apparently they had gotten the wool pulled over their eyes too. But after it kind of blew up on Twitter, then some actual stunt performers from the new Star Wars movies reached out to us and said, hey, we saw what happened. We'd like to come on your
Knights of
show
Ren
and actually be real guests on your show. So we got Daisy Ridley, stunt double, and another guy, her boyfriend, who had done a ton of stunts on Star Wars as well. So
He was one of the Knights of Ren.
Knights of Ren.
Yeah. So they legitimized this.
Yeah, no, but that's the good news. I mean, that's a happy ending. But to me, it's terrible that somebody would lie to you about the people who did the stunts in that movie. They know who everybody in their community is.
Yeah.
And stunt couples are great. Stunt couples are great because they've got like ponytails, tattoos. They're wild, weird, and lovable people, aren't they?
Yeah. It was so great. And and I'm gonna turn over to Ben here, but I did. You asked favorite interview. I gotta say, speaking of Star Wars, my favorite interview of all my life was one of my shortest, but one of the best. I had a sit down with George Lucas face to face. I loved it.
Wow.
I had a sit down face to face with Mark Hamill, Mr. Luke Skywalker. It was all for the same magazine I was writing for at the time. So it was.
Who are you writing for?
Well, we'll talk later. But I write for a bunch of different places.
Wow. But I interviewed Hamill as well. The great thing about Hamill is he's got stories on everything. You know what I mean? I mean, if you do your homework, you'll get I got him talking about Rod Serling and being on the Night Gallery and all this other stuff. I mean, Hamill's one of those. Hamill has a nerd tendency, so he's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I met his son. His son does animation and other stuff. His son Nathan, I went to the 10-year Robot Chicken afterward party, and
I was there.
Were you really?
Luke was too.
We went to the screening. I don't know if we were invited to the party.
Oh, we can't get into the after party.
Well, you missed getting drunk with me and Trejos Tacos.
That's cool.
The terrible thing is at the after party, I gave my phone to somebody to take a picture. Everybody was drunk, including myself and my friend Pete. My friend Pete and I were pretty whacked, and so we handed the phone. Somebody took a picture of us with the guy who played Jar Jar Binks.
Oh, nice.
And
we met him too.
He's a very nice guy, but
he was very nice.
The guy who took the picture is so drunk, it looks like all three of us are running on fire. It's super blurry.
Ahmed Best. That's the guy's name. Ahmed
Yeah.
Best.
Incredibly nice dude,
That's awesome. I was just going to say something. Oh, yeah. The thing I love about Mark Hamill, when I've seen interviews with him, if Mark Hamill wasn't in Star Wars, Mark Hamill would be the kind of guy who would love Star Wars, And I think he'd love
my brother had a quote on that on the guy from Night Court, the guy who played Bull on Night Court. Donald said, Richard Mall. Donald described Richard Mall. He goes, if Richard Mall hadn't been on a bunch of sitcoms, he would be home watching them.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which I thought was funny.
Now, you wrote companion books for the Incredible Hulk TV series from the 70s and for Buck Rogers in the 25th century. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Happily, my friend. You'll find this with your own stuff, you guys, your own writers. You're gonna cover something. You'll do a retrospective for your magazines, and you'll keep hearing great stories. This goes for all five of you will know this, and you'll know good stories when you keep hearing them. You know what I mean? And with Buck Rogers, I did a retrospective on Erin Gray, who played Wilma Deering.
Mm-hmm.
And she was an incredibly cool chick, and she was really smart, and she was really sharp, and her stories were so intimate. You know what I mean? There were when people are phoning it in during an interview, and when people are taking it seriously and answering your questions. When you have, the best interviews are like a slow dance. You know what I mean? Where you and that person, they're answering you honestly, you're questioning them honestly, and it just. And with Aaron was one of my favorite interviews. It had the best title of any article I ever did. I called it 25th Century Fox.
Nice, that's cool.
Isn't it a great title? A great article from a great title, boys and girl. And once you have a great title, once you have a great interview, an interview writes itself. So Aaron kept telling me great stories from this, and she would, and every time I ran into her, she'd have like 5 more stories I never knew. And I remember when I was typing up the article, I remember thinking, this is an article. I'm going to sell this for money, but this is an article. This is a book, and every time I found someone else from the show, they were just amazed that someone wanted to talk about Buck Rogers. You know what I mean? And the great thing about it is the stories were so weird that every time I found all these great writers, actors, directors who were involved with the show, every time I'd hear a great story from these guys, the stories got better and better. There was a soap opera diva who'd starred in One Life to Live or General Hospital, whatever it was. She was on the show for 25 years. And when she heard me calling for Buck Rogers, she said they just gave me a career retrospective, and the audience's biggest laughs were when I was an Olympian sled operator on Buck Rogers. And once they start telling you stories from the show, they can't stop. And the more I get, here's a great story from Buck Rogers. Again, tell me this isn't a great story. They have a famous Playboy playmate on the show, Star 80. She was in Galaxina. I'm blanking on her name. Hold on. Dorothy Stratton. So Dorothy Stratton appears in Buck Rogers, because she's Playmate of the Year. She appears in Buck Rogers. And the other girl, one of the guest girls on the show, is telling me amazing stories. John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd were shooting Blues Brothers. They ran down to the set of Buck Rogers to try and hit on Dorothy Stratton, So everybody, Erin Gray, who was used to being the hottie of the queen bee of the show, the beautiful regular girl.
Yeah.
Even she is watching Teamsters walking into walls because they're staring at her face. They're so in love with her. And so she does the episode, and Erin goes, she was like a siren. She had this whispering voice. And she said everybody, including women, were just intoxicated with her. And they would listen hard to hear her talk. And the stories about her doing the episode, she literally walked into the sand and she couldn't hit her mark. So they put a sandbag on her mark so she'd know to stop. And she tripped on the sandbag. And then her voice was so soft. They brought in Anne Lockhart, from Battlestar Galactica to redub her voice because they couldn't pick up her voice.
Wow.
So, but here's where it gets interesting. She's murdered. She's murdered by her husband. She's murdered by her husband, becomes a famous tabloid story of the 80s, Star 80 and all this other stuff. She's murdered. And then she winds up in a TV movie about her life, played by another Buck Rogers guest, a young Jamie Lee Curtis, that same year. How weird is that?
Oh, that's bizarre.
What?
That's crazy. Hey, Derek, did you have a question?
Yeah. So I can't ask too much about the horror movies you've done because I'm on here usually as like an outsider, not somebody who grew up knowing horror. And I was looking at your IMDb page, and the scariest thing I've seen that you were in was Beethoven's Second. Which, let me tell you, seeing a Saint Bernard pull the whole side of a beach house off, it was pretty scary.
He was saving He was saving a girl's honor.
That's true.
He was saving the daughter's virtue. The great thing about that is we shot that at the cabin from the Hulk. If you saw the Ang Lee Hulk, this is the scene where Hulk. Our cabin is also in the great outdoors where the bear ass is running around. The lake by the cabin, that's also where Jaws the Revenge was shot, and Truman Show.
Oh, wow.
So the great thing about that, you guys, the most famous actor in that scene, that carnival scene, you watch for the goat. The goat, you'll see a goat walking around in the movie. That's the goat who gets eaten by the T-Rex in Jurassic Park.
Yes.
I love these connections.
I'm looking at that goat thinking, this goat has the greatest resume of anyone I've ever met.
Wow.
And if you read the Beethoven Second comic book, they draw me as a 400-pound black man. I don't know why.
Okay.
I'm a 400-pound African-American gentleman in a military uniform for some reason, if you read the Beethoven comic book.
Wow.
All right.
Did you meet Charles Grodin?
And here you've got these great stories about Beethoven. It makes me very happy.
Oh, you want Beethoven? Okay. I'm going to give you Beethoven stories. Okay, here we go. So we did that at the Disney Ranch, which you've seen in every single movie ever made. The Disney Ranch is in everything.
Yep.
And it was weird because that same summer I was doing a Michael Jackson video directed by Mick Garris. Mick Garris was doing this top secret Michael Jackson video. I literally booked the Michael Jackson video just as I was finishing up Beethoven. And Stephen King had written it. So let's see, it's okay. So I'm down to 5%. Hold on, let me move to this one. So Stephen King had written this. I'm going to move to another charger, kids. Let's see if this works. It didn't.
Oh no.
5%. We're going to have a
show on Beethoven's Second.
Oh yeah. Everybody, welcome back to part 2 of our interview with Pat Jankiewicz. As we know, part 1 got a little bit cut short.
Welcome back. We are here to talk Beethoven's Second with Pat Jankiewicz.
Okay. Well, let's start with one of you asked about Charles Grodin right before my shabby phone, which was at 15%, died.
Yeah, I want to hear all about Charles Grodin.
Here's the exciting thing about Charles Grodin. Watching his hair sitting on a styrofoam head in the makeup trailer while we're getting ready for the movie was really exciting.
Oh my gosh. So he doesn't have that kind of beautiful hair he did in that second movie.
It was sitting on a styrofoam head, and right before we shot our scene, he yelled at a puppy, and Bonnie, he insisted the puppy bit him, which it didn't. Bonnie, who played the wife, I'm blanking on her last name, really adorable blonde chick from Chicago.
Yeah.
And she stood up in front of the crew and said, Chuck, we all know bleeping well that puppy didn't bite you. Be a man and stop that. And he was cool after that. I mean, once she yelled at him, you know.
Nice. And then after that, he was sticking up for the puppies. Like the end of the movie, he's like, "Put the puppy down."
Oh, yeah.
Being the dad to the puppies he never was, because he didn't want all these puppies, and the kids had to hide it from him.
The real Charles Grodin would have helped the villainous drown the puppies.
Whoa.
Oh my god!
All right, welcome back, everybody. We have Matt Jankiewicz in the house.
Back to the horror.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
So listen, well, we kind of got cut short a little bit. Well, actually, no, that was the first half. Danae, I know you noticed that Derek and Ben had a split. But
yeah, the Mad Max guys got him.
We don't need them. We don't need them. I got the A-team right here. All three of you are the show.
That's right. Danae has a question though for Derek.
Oh,
Go ahead, dear lady.
go ahead. Okay. Well, I just was wondering if because we talked about interviews a little bit last night. I'm not as cultured in the horror genre as all of you guys are, but I was just wondering if you could talk about like when you guys interview Ray Bradbury, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, he was my very first interview. He was my, I did that for my high school paper. I mean, I'm from Detroit, and nobody important ever goes to Detroit. But when I came to California, celebrities were everywhere. I mean, in Southern California, no matter what part of it you're in, you bump into celebrities everywhere you go. I remember years after Flash Gordon, the guy who played Flash Gordon, Sam Jones,
yeah.
he came to my high school. He was giving a lecture at my high school about safety. And I remember my girlfriend leaning over to me and she goes, and it was more than I wanted to hear at 15, she goes, I would do him. And I remember thinking, well, Sharon, he's Flash Gordon. Of course you would. I told the camcorder. You know, I mean, it's Flash Gordon, man. So with Ray Bradbury, he was my very, very, very first interview. And God bless him. I mean, he was a really sweet guy. I'm sure all my questions were horrible. I mean, every time I come across the interview, I think I'm so excited to find it again. It's like an old friend. You know how it is. Danae, you started working on your high school or junior high paper, right?
Actually, I went to a really small school, so we didn't have a paper. In college, I started working with a entertainment website, and that was where I did a couple of my first interviews.
What website was it, if I can ask?
It's changed the name now. I'm not sure. I'll tell you later.
But she has
understood. But
she's written.
But your earliest.
She's got a couple of books published, though.
Oh yeah,
you do.
Yeah, I'm an independent author, so I've published a novel and a book of love poetry. Thank you so much. A book of love poetry about coffee.
Whoa! You can't. No. Hold on, Danae. You can't just say that. Now I need to hear the title of my True Love Coffee book.
It's called The Coffee Bible.
Excellent.
I wrote it with one of my best friends from college, and she did a lot of the art in it. But yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm getting ready to publish another novel, though. It's going to be the first in a series of 4 about Hades and Persephone.
Wow.
No, really? Persephone? Wow.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like when you get that book, when you get the white box, when they FedEx you the book, there's nothing like opening that book and hearing that static electricity between the cover and the first page, you know?
Yeah. It's like holding a newborn baby. It's amazing.
It's better than a baby because it's completely you. You didn't have to share the creation with anyone.
Exactly.
Now, this is the perfect transition. You've written on several books. Can you tell us the books you've written, Pat?
Oh, sure. I wrote Just When You Thought It Was Safe, a Jaws companion, about all 4 of the Jaws movies and the ripoffs, and the real life shark attack that inspired Peter Benchley's book. You know,
you wrote a book about that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Peter Benchley, Jaws was based on a real incident that happened in New Jersey. So, and with me, Jaws was one of those horror movies you loved as a kid. You know what I mean? I mean, it's one of the most. To this day, it is one of the 25 top run movies on basic cable.
Yeah.
Wow.
And people, It was one of those movies because it was one of the first blockbusters. It's the first movie to make $200 million.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of them. This drives me crazy. The movie is punished. The movie is punished by the sequels.
Yeah.
Nobody holds you. This is true. I mean, nobody holds Exorcist responsible for The Exorcist 2 or any other ones except the third one. The third one's the good one, but not as good as the first.
Scene, that scary scene, The Exorcist 3 in the mental hospital, the real quiet scene when she comes running out with the scissors. Oh my God.
Amazing. See that in the theater. See that scene in the theater, and you watch, and it's long and dull. A lot of the movie is long and dull. It's interesting. There's some interesting shots. I think Samuel L. Jackson is an extra in one scene.
Of course he is.
Really?
You know, but you watch this movie, and it's long and dull. And then when they make you jump, like when the crucifix opens its eyes, or when the girl gets in the hallway, you know, with the fast walker. I don't want to give it away.
Yeah, I don't want to give it away.
That is
one of the scariest scenes I've ever seen.
It's an amazing jump out of nowhere. It's one of the greatest jumps in movie history. And that's on that jump alone, that movie's got a better rep than it's normally had, you know?
Yeah. But tell us a little bit about your book, the Jaws book.
Okay, so people were kind of, Jaws' reputation was suffering because people were judging it by Jaws 2, Jaws 3D, and Jaws: The Revenge. And to me, it's not that movie's fault any more than Godfather is responsible for Godfather 3. You know?
Yeah.
And it made me mad. There was a movie book called Easy Riders and Raging Bulls. And it was very anti-Spielberg because Jaws made money. And the whole argument of the book is movies were so great until Steven Spielberg and George Lucas made movies that made money. And that always enraged me. You know what I mean? I mean, Jaws is the first horror movie to make that much money. It outgrossed The Exorcist. It's the biggest horror movie cost per average in history. I mean, Jurassic Park is also horror, you know, and I mean, I ran into this even as a publicist at Universal, where when I was doing monster stuff for the studio, they wouldn't let us include Jaws and Jurassic Park because those aren't monster movies, you know, and Steven Spielberg said there were thrillers, so the studio had to consider them thrillers. They could not be considered monster movies. It drove me crazy. A T-Rex is eating people, but it's not a monster movie, you know? So
now with the book, like what are some of the things that you wrote in your book that you researched and found that's like not in Jaws log, not in these other books? Like what were the things that you released to the Jaws audience that are like interviews or things that happened on set, you know, that you found
you know what? Thank you. That's a great question. I'm going to do two of my all-time favorites. Two of my all-time favorites in the book. You've seen Jaws a million times, and they used to argue that a flaw in a great movie doesn't count if you don't notice it. So the oldest son in the movie is Michael Brody. You remember? He at the beginning of Jaws, he has a thick Boston accent, even though the family is supposed to be from New York. Mm-hmm. You know, he goes, "Ma, I got bit by a vampire." That's a Boston accent at the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And remember, they said one of the plot points is that Brody's a cop from New York. That he's a gritty street cop from New York who's come to Boston.
Yeah.
So they have a great, great line later in the movie. And the only place that showed up is my book, and I found the 90-year-old actress who did his voice. June Foray is a famous voice. She was on The Twilight Zone. She did a million cartoons. She was the voice of Rocky the Flying Squirrel. She has a bunch of voices in Roger Rabbit. She was voiced. She's the voice of the killer doll on Twilight Zone, Talkie Tina.
Oh wow!
What? Really? I did not know that.
Right. So she. You know, you're right. Look it up. But she doesn't get credit in the movie. It's her voice, and she confirmed it for me because I've heard her voice a million times, and I interviewed her for Starlog for one of her cartoon things. And I finally looked at her and I go, "Are you Michael Brody in Jaws?" And she got so excited I knew this. She did the exact line to me. If you watch the movie, Michael has one great line in the movie. Later in the movie, where the dad Brody goes to his son, he goes, "Hey, just go in the pond, will ya?" And he goes, in June Foray's voice, "The pond's for old ladies." And he says, "Yeah, well, do it for the old man, will ya?" And the shark comes into the pond. June did his voice, and she was so excited I knew it. And she told me this great story. Spielberg hired her because she did a lot of kids' voices. You could hear her doing it on a couple episodes of Twilight Zone. She redubs a little girl in one of the Twilight Zone episodes she was in. So she told me when she redubbed that line, she came in to do the Ponds for Old Ladies. Spielberg was throwing talkie Tina lines at her from Twilight Zone while she was doing her dubbing.
Oh, man.
You know, and that never came up before my book.
Tina.
Yes, yeah, and I don't
think I like you.
And, you know what I mean? And so she never got credit for Jaws. And when I talked to her about it, she was so excited because she said, "Dear, nobody's known that. Nobody ever mentions that because, again, the Jaws credits are cut from when they hit the beach. There's like 20 members of the cast who do not get credit, and like 8 of them are in my book. You know, the kid with the fake fin is in my book. The thing with Jaws, I wanted you to hear the stories that nobody knew. I wanted you to hear the stories in the sequels that nobody knew. There's a great scene in Jaws 2. Mm-hmm. At the time, one of the most expensive movies ever made. Watch the movie next time you see the movie, and you'll see there's a scene where Brody is drunk, and he's been fired, and the deputy comes over. You know, and the deputy comes over. You know what scene I'm talking about?
Yeah.
How about you today? Do you know it?
Yeah, I know Jaws.
Oh, this is Jaws 2, Smarty.
Okay. So, Jaws referring to all the Jaws, not just one.
Fair enough, Your Highness. Fair enough. Okay. So what happens in the scene is he's lost his job. That makes the deputy the chief. So he comes to the house, and Brody's wife is like, "Thank you, Jeff." And Brody himself is going, "Jeff, we appreciate this, Jeff. Thanks for coming by the house, Jeff." Well, the character's name is Lenny. The actor's name is Jeff. So this expensive movie, they're calling the actor by his real name for a 7-minute scene. When I got Jeffrey, and Jeffrey went on, Jeffrey Kramer, who plays Deputy Hendricks, he went on to become a Fox executive. He was the guy who greenlit the X-Files. He became a big...
I didn't know that. We just had him on our show here a few weeks back. I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. You know, you should have read my books, buddy.
Oh, man, I wish I'd have known that.
Yeah, Jeffrey Kramer greenlit the X-Files. He also, you know, he did one of his last movies with Chuck Norris. Please tell me you talked about Hero and the Terror with him.
No.
How could you not talk about Hero and the Terror? He's got great stories.
Yeah, we're bringing him back, though, to probably talk Halloween 2 with him.
Yeah, we'll
have more time to talk some more with him.
Before you do that, you guys and gal, look up my Halloween 2 retrospective. They shot that at a hospital my mom worked at in Huntington. My mom was a nurse in Huntington Memorial in Pasadena.
Yeah. Isn't it like a military hospital now?
It is. It's sort of. It's still a basic. What happens is there is a military hospital in the area, but Huntington Memorial is also the hospital the doctor works at in the first or second Annabelle movie. You know.
You say, wait, you did a retrospective. Where'd you do a retrospective?
Fangoria.
We're going to get to that in just a second because I really want to talk about some Fangoria stuff.
Can you still take a boiling bath there at that hospital?
First of all, and by the way, she's in my article and she's also in my Buck Rogers book. That's Pamela Susan Shoup. She said the water was ice cold and she got a massive ear infection from it.
What? Really?
Oh, wow. That's cold.
Yeah, and she said Dick Durock, I don't know, Dick Warlock. Here's a Halloween 2 connection for you. Dick Warlock, who doubled Hooper in the shark cage in Jaws. Dick Warlock plays the Shape in Halloween 2. He hurt her neck. Yeah, he hurt her neck dunking her in the water.
Yeah.
Wait, I didn't know that. So Michael Myers was Hooper in the cage when they did that scene?
Yeah, Michael Myers doubled. He's still alive. You should talk to him. Dick Warlock, cool guy.
I saw him at the 40th anniversary convention 2 years ago.
A really sweet guy. I interviewed every Michael Myers at the same event for the 35th anniversary of Halloween, Return to Haddonfield. And Warlock is a good foot shorter than Nick Castle.
Yeah.
And he kind of walks like a bad guy. Tommy Lee Wallace and all these guys who worked on Halloween, Dean Cundy, he goes, Dean Cundy told me he was upset with how Dick Warlock and the other Michael Myers, he goes, they comp around. He goes, Nick Castle moves like a cat, you know? He just kind of, you don't notice Michael Myers in the first movie because he's the son of a dancer, and so the guy has rhythm and movement. Mm-hmm. So Nick Castle would just glide into a scene without you seeing him. But in the second one, he's walking like Michael Myers. You know what I mean?
That's cool. That's cool. Hey, did we talk about? Did we interrupt you about the Ray Bradbury? Did you answer that question? What was Ray Bradbury?
I did not. I went on a tangent. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I did an interview with him in high school. He was my very, very, very first interview. And my voice kept breaking. It was one of those tapes where your voice is squeaking and breaking through. He gave me great answers. My interview questions were terrible, but if you interview someone great, they will give you better answers than you ask. You guys will notice this on the show. You're going to have better answers. You're going to get better answers to some interviews. Ray Bradbury, I remember one of his throwaway answers. He revealed
today. That's what's happening right now.
Oh yeah. But I asked him about Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. You remember that?
Yeah.
It's based on a Ray Bradbury short story, but the short story is really, really beautiful. It's this short story about a dinosaur I think he's he's in the fog off Santa Monica, and he hears another dinosaur, and you realize he's signaling in the dark. He's roaring out in the dark, and he gets the answering roar of the dinosaur, and he's excited, and he comes to shore, and the dinosaur realizes what he thought was another dinosaur was the lighthouse. And in his anger, he knocks over the lighthouse and swims out to sea. And Ray Bradbury tells me this story that after the story ran and got him a lot of attention in the Saturday Evening Post, they were ripping it off for a horror movie they're doing called The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. Mm-hmm. But the guy animating the dinosaur happened to be Ray Bradbury's best friend, Ray Harryhausen.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's right.
And so Harryhausen says, Ray, they're screwing you. I'm getting paid to do it, so I can't come forth and mention this to them. But you might want to tell your lawyer they're ripping off your story. And Ray Bradbury contacted the studio. The studio had one of those oh crap moments. This is what he told me in high school. So they play it up in the middle of the ad based on a brilliant Ray Bradbury short story. And Ray Bradbury is so excited to see the foghorn. He thinks the movie is going to be the fate. He goes, the dinosaur knocks over the foghorn in the lighthouse in the first 2 minutes. He goes, my story's over before the opening credits.
Before we move on to Fangoria, because I do want to talk some Fangoria, but did you have what about Jaws? Did you want to finish up a Jaws discussion? Do you have any other Jaws questions?
Oh, sure. Well, I tried to tell everything you'd possibly want to know about Jaws. The one thing she can tell you guys because she has 2 books. The one thing when you want to do the difference between a book and an article. In a book, you're basically smoking you got to smoke the subject like a cigarette. You got to finish. I don't smoke, but you know what I mean? Yeah. You want to finish the subject in the article. You want to have, if they want to know any more about the movie, they can look up the article. Yeah, I mean, they can look. And when you do a book, you're basically smoking 6 packs of cigarettes because you're trying to cover every single thing. And you want to do something in a book that you can't get anywhere else. I did a body count for every shark in every one of the movies, and that's why I wrote the book. I wanted to know the weight and stats of every shark, the body count, and how he died.
That's crazy. That's awesome.
That's awesome. Do you remember what the body count was?
Yeah. In fact, well, here you go. You want a weird fact? The body count for Michael Myers in the original Halloween and the original Shark and Jaws, and I think Carpenter did this deliberately, are exactly the same. The shark eats 5 people, and the shark eats 5 people and a dog. Michael Myers kills 5 people and a dog in Halloween.
That's pretty.
Oh my god,
that's pretty cool. That's
fun fact for the day. They have a lot in common.
I love that. The thing is, because that was the 70s, Carpenter and Spielberg, to have these movies which are classics because of the amount of restraint that they showed. You didn't see the monster all the time. You didn't see a lot of it. You saw not a lot of blood until, Jaws, more towards the end. But I think that's something that's so missing today, is there's very little restraint. You just don't build towards that anymore,
Yeah, you're exactly right. We're in the CG age where if you can show anything, they want to show everything. And I mean, Tom Cruise in War of the Worlds, he can't possibly give you an expression for an entire freeway collapsing behind him,
I know. Dude, speaking of Tom Cruise, did you see the stunt he pulled off this past week with jumping his motorcycle off that gigantic ramp off a cliff?
No, I did not hear about this.
It's ridiculous.
Did he break another ankle?
Well, he's
by the way, that ankle cost them a hell of a lot of money. I mean, remember they wanted $5 million for Henry Cavill to show. They wanted Henry Cavill when the movie, wanted to shit. They needed to do reshoots on Justice League.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted $5 million to allow him to shave his mustache for Justice League. And they wouldn't do it, and they took it out by CG, and then he screwed up his ankle. He could have shaved the mustache and regrown it in the time it took for the ankle to heal.
He lost out on that $5 million. That's for sure.
Isn't that terrible?
Yeah.
Hey, Luke, any other questions before we move on to Fangoria? Or Janae, do you have any Jaws?
Any other first film Jaws facts that you found that no one else did and you got to tell the world?
Well, the June Foray one was great because one of the reviews called it an obviously made up fact, and then they ran into June Foray, who confirmed it to them, and they apologized to me in the next review.
That's cool. That's awesome. Hey, did you meet many of the crew and cast of the?
Oh, damn near everybody. Spielberg was busy on War of the Worlds. I got Dreyfus. I got Teddy Grossman, who was eaten in the rowboat. Well, here's the weird thing. The weird thing is the Jaws, the book had been in my sock drawer. It was one of those things I was going to work on, and you'll realize this when you're doing a lot of freelance and stuff, when you're working on a book, you'll ignore important projects to continue doing the freelance stuff.
Yeah.
My brother Donald kept saying they're going to do a Jaws fest. This is the early 2005 for one of the anniversaries. He kept saying, you got to go back to Martha's Vineyard. That's the only way you're going to finish the book. And it's screw the book. And they announced Peter Benchley was coming to the island, which he hadn't done. He was very sick. They were claiming he had a hip surgery, but you could tell, sadly, he was on the way out. He looked really bad, and unfortunately. Yeah. I wound up, well, okay, you want a story? Brian Singer told me the story. Brian Singer grew up across the street from Peter Benchley.
Really?
Yeah. Really? Brian Singer told me all these amazing Peter Benchley Jaws stories. Peter Benchley kept a copy of a photo of himself with Michael Caine from the island on the mantle of his Princeton, New Jersey home. And I asked Brian Singer, well, why do they do that? And Brian Singer had explained to me, he goes, Mr. Benchley, why do you have that picture on the mantle? And he goes, because if the island had made, he told this, Singer told me, he told it to him when he was 13. Peter Benchley, who was friends with his mom and stuff, looked at him and he goes, because if that picture had made money, I would have been set for life. And instead it was a giant bomb. And my wife, Wendy, and I keep that picture up there to keep me humble.
There you go. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Not a picture of Jaws, a picture of the island, which is kind of hilarious.
What's the name of the book?
So there's one Jaws story you
later got him in.
Pat, what's the name of the book?
The name of the book is Just When You Thought It Was Safe, a Jaws Companion.
Yeah.
Nice. I have everyone. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, go ahead and finish that.
You go. Hey, I'm used to doing interviews, so if I'm overpowering, shut me up and tell. This is your interview. No. I'm sorry.
But what was your favorite interview you did for the book?
That changes every day. When you're working on the book, it changes, but I'll be honest with you. I interviewed a guy who did a lot of John Carpenter movies and Spielberg movies, a guy named Roy Arbogast.
Everybody talks about him, yeah.
And Roy, there's pictures of this on my Facebook page. You can see it in the book. Roy had a giant 5-foot porcelain shark with a marble eye in the corner of his effects shop. He helped build the original shark.
Yeah.
And I said, Roy, what's the story there? That was the tabletop model they mentioned in the Jaws log in Carl Gottlieb's book. That was the tabletop model that sold the studio on making Jaws as possible, that it could be possible.
That's cool.
And after the book, it fell in a California earthquake. It broke. He swept it up and threw it away. And Joe Alves told me I could have recast all the parts. So I actually held the original shark held by Spielberg to sell the studio on making it.
Wow.
Man,
amazing.
So,
something breaks and you just throw it away? You don't get out the super
He swept it up and threw it away. It's horrifying,
It's like what they did with the original Orca. Like, oh, it's kind of rotting and falling apart. We'll just throw it in the dumpster versus try to put it back together or restore it.
When I do, if you read my book, I did a book on Buck Rogers as well. Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, a TV companion. And friends of mine, when I was a kid, another interview for my school paper was a guy named Mick Garris who went on to become a big director. He's done a lot of really good Stephen King movies. He's done what I would argue stands with Salem's Lot as TV's best Stephen King adaptation.
It's the movie that scared America.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I remember when I was a kid, Mick and his wife, Cynthia, great. She's in a lot of his movies. She's great. She sings the title theme to Chud 2 by the Chud. So in the movie. So they were taking me around the Universal backlot, because there was something Mick wrote was being filmed. And so it was kind of exciting. I'd been a set crasher, so getting on legally always weirded you out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're walking around the back lot, and this is long after the Buck Rogers TV show. And we were right by stage 28, which they just tore down, but it was one of the busiest. That's where they shot Jurassic Park and a lot of other big, big, wonderful Universal movies. And I go, oh my God, laying next to the dumpster was Buck Rogers' Starfighter and one of the villains' ships. And they were so big, they put them next to the dumpster. And they spray painted trash on both of them. And they were about the size of a catamaran. They were weightless. It would have cost them nothing to save them. But I had to have been looking at the last two Buck Rogers ships. Just seeing them there. I mean, Universal was literally, they needed the space and they're throwing away their history,
That's terrible.
They're crazy.
Why'd they tear down that stage?
You ready? You want to be sad? You ready? Why did they tear down that stage? Because they're making Harry Potter Land bigger.
Danae's probably not so against that.
Yeah, why did they get rid of the Jaws?
I can tell. I can tell she's a muggle.
I mean, as a Harry Potter fan, I understand wanting to make it bigger, but as an even bigger fan of just history overall, my heart is breaking right now.
Oh, you want your heart to break, Danae? Listen to this, you guys, all three of you. To make room when they were building Jurassic Park, the ride, they knocked down Jack Pierce's makeup studio where he did Wolfman, where he did Boris Karloff and the Frankensteins.
Oh, get out!
They knocked down Jack Pierce's makeup studio. There you go. All that yak hair. They knocked down Jack Pierce's studio.
That's
wow. Thank you.
I don't Universal. I wonder if they realize that because they try to do the Dark Universe and bring back the Universal monsters. That is their bread and butter, the golden egg. That is the Universal monsters. They can't. Oh, they've got to stop doing that.
They always forget it, and then when one of them makes money again, they always remember it. Like with Invisible Man in January, or no, Invisible Man I think came out in March or April, right after the shutdown.
Yeah,
Yeah, that one did pretty well, or people seem to really like it. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh no!
Uh-oh.
Look.
Uh-oh.
Thank you for tuning in to the first part of our interview with Pat Jankiewicz. Please tune in tomorrow for the conclusion, and we'll be talking more Jaws, Halloween 2, his retrospective that he did, plus the top 5 horror movies that you've never seen. It's part of the top 50 horror movies that he did for Shudder. So much more to talk about. We'll see you guys tomorrow.